Welcome back to another lecture of Dental Pathshala, where we help you understand and learn dentistry better and easy way. So we are starting with the express revision course of periodontics. This is a continuation video. We have already covered gingiva and the supporting structures like periodontal ligament, cementum, alveolar bone, and the age changes in the periodontium. So before we get started with the today's lecture, make sure you subscribe to the channel. 60% of the students have not subscribed to the channel and yet watching the videos. So guys, please do subscribe to the channel and hit on the bell icon so that you don't miss any of our future videos. And for more interesting notes, you can check out our website www.x2.com, or if you are looking for the notes of this particular video, then you can check out the link provided in the description box below. So before starting with the today's lecture, I would like to thank you first for all the warm wishes for our first year anniversary. So guys, starting with the periodontal pathology. Now, I am assuming that most of you guys watch Bollywood movies, Tollywood movies, something like that. So we have got a hero, which is our Shah Rukh Khan here, and this is the girls' headquarter, you can say, or the girls' hostel, something like this. So these are the walls of the girls' hostel now. Now what happens? He cannot reach here directly. So there is a warden which is standing right here and which is not letting this Shah Rukh Khan meet the Anjali. So what he does, he fight against the warden. He reaches outside the building and he spread his arms and ask for Anjali, Anjali, and then here some girls starts coming after hearing to his voice, because he is a handsome guy, so girls keep on coming. So this is the story of the inflammatory response. What do we have here? This Shah Rukh Khan is our bacteria. When he comes into our body, that is the boundary, the territory, this is the girls' hostel, which is the blood vessel, and these are the endothelial cells, the walls of the blood vessels, and this warden here is the mast cell, guys. So whoever the bacteria comes, so it recognizes it and it catches the guy. Now in here we have girls coming, so these are the neutrophils, right? So let's talk a little bit about inflammatory response in a serious way. So guys, here we have the blood vessel. In the blood vessel we have the endothelial cells. So these are the endothelial cells of the blood vessel. And then what happens? Then guys, we have here the bacteria. Let's write B for the bacteria. So there are antigens which are present on the bacteria. These are the antigens. These antigens which are present on the bacteria, now again let's write it here. For gram positive, we have got lipoticoic acid. Lipoticoic acid. One second. Lipoticoic acid. For gram negative bacteria, the virulence factor is which is present on the outer membrane of the gram negative bacteria, which is our lipopolysaccharides. This lipopolysaccharide is more virulent, that means it's more dangerous, right? So this is the bacteria. This bacteria has got some antigens. So what happens? Here guys is our cell membrane. So this bacteria is going to do two things. One is releasing the endotoxins. So let's see if this bacteria is releasing the endotoxin here, and in response to this endotoxin the warden comes. So our warden is the mast cell. So this is our warden who's not letting the Shah Rukh Khan go inside. So bacteria is our Shah Rukh Khan. So there are granules which are present here in the mast cell. So this is the mast cell. Now what happens, guys? This bacteria releases this endotoxin, right? So this is the endotoxin which is released by the bacteria. This endotoxin is going to break the cell membrane. So if you can see here, there is a break in the cell membrane. So this break in the cell membrane, due to the endotoxin, first of all, the arachidonic acid gets converted into two things. If it is going through the cyclooxygenase pathway, then the prostaglandins are formed. If the lipoxygenase pathway, then the leukotrienes are formed. So there are two things, first of all. And the mast cell, which is our warden, in response to the endotoxin released by the bacteria. So it has got here, if you can see here, it has got the antigen presenting cells. So it is going to catch this antigen present on the bacteria here. So when it combines to the bacteria, let's draw one more bacteria here, guys. Suppose this is one more bacteria. So in response to this, the mast cell releases some chemicals. These chemicals are histamines, leukotrienes, again because leukotrienes are released by arachidonic acid also and released by the mast cell also, and the prostaglandins are also released. So all these chemicals will act on, all these chemicals are going to act on the endothelial cells, and in response to this, there is a contraction which occurs in the endothelial cells. So if you see, okay, I am sorry guys, we have to redo it again. So this is the endothelial cell, we remember that this is the endothelial cell. So what happens in response, great, now in response to these chemicals, there is a contraction which happens in the endothelial cells, and if you can see here, a gap is formed between the endothelial cells. So if you can see here, a gap is formed between the endothelial cells, and guys, in between the blood vessel we have the neutrophils, right? So there are neutrophil, monocytes, which are nicely floating, enjoying in the blood vessel. So these are our girls which are enjoying, and these endothelial cells have got P-selectin. So there is something known as P-selectin which is going to bind to these neutrophils. So neutrophils bind to this P-selectin and roll over. So roll over. So from one cell, one P-selectin to the other P-selectin, like that. So here let's draw one more, to the other P-selectin, they roll over like this. So they roll over from one P-selectin to another P-selectin, and when they see this gap, they slide over this gap. So they slide over this gap here. These are the neutrophils, our hot girls. So they slide over this gap and they pass through between this gap. This process is, what do we call them? Diapedesis. Then these neutrophils come out. So the neutrophils come out and they releases chemicals. In response to this chemical, more neutrophils come, more macrophages come. See, neutrophils can eat only some amount of bacteria. That means we can say neutrophils eat few bacteria. But monocytes are huge in size. They can engulf large amount of bacteria. So neutrophil give response to other neutrophils as well as monocytes. So there is a release of cytokines, and these cytokines are the chemicals which are interleukins, tumor necrotic factor. So interleukin 1, tumor necrotic factor alpha, interleukin 8. So all these factors, they damage the area and they make a path. They make a path to the bacteria. So these neutrophils, they make a nice path, unidirectional path to the bacteria, and this path is, what do we call, the chemotaxis. And therefore they go to reach the bacteria, they engulf the bacteria. So this is the whole process of inflammation. So guys, we are going to go back again and read about it. So first of all, when we are talking about the periodontal disease, what causes a periodontal disease? There are two things, imbalance of two things. So periodontal disease is due to the imbalance in two things. This is not balanced, right? One is heavy, one is light. So there is an imbalance I am trying to show you here. One is the imbalance between the biofilm, which is the plaque. Another one is the host response or immunity, host response. Both of these things causes the periodontal disease. Also the gingival disease. So what happens, usually what happens, we are talking about usual here. So most often the gingival disease causes the periodontal disease. This is mostly, not always, not always I am going to write. Most of the times the gingivitis precedes to periodontitis, but not all the cases of gingivitis precedes to the progresses to the periodontitis. So in the gingivitis, or I should write gingivitis, right? Gingivitis. Itis word is for inflammation. So if we see there is inflammation in the gingiva, we call it gingivitis. If we see inflammation in the periodontal ligament or the surrounding bone, then we call it periodontitis. Are we clear up till now, guys? Very easy. Gingiva means the gums. Itis means inflammation. If there is inflammation in the gingiva, we call gingivitis. Periodontal tissues, that is the periodontal ligament and the supporting bone, inflammation in that we call the periodontitis. So what happens in response to a bacteria? Now let us draw the tooth structure here, and we have got gingiva. Now I hope that if you have watched the previous part of the video, we have already covered the gingiva. So this is the sulcular epithelium, then we have got the attached gingiva, marginal gingiva, then we have got the attached gingiva, right. So what happens in response to the bacteria? There are lot of neutrophils which we see in the connective tissue. So in the connective tissue we see a lot of neutrophils, right, and also all the cells like macrophages, plasma cells, lymphocytes. So we see that there is a release of destructive enzymes here. So there is a lot of destruction going on in the connective tissue, and once there is a destruction going on, there is a degradation of the collagen. So the collagen starts degrading, or depletion of the collagen starts. Now also we see that there is a proliferation of the junctional epithelium. We have the junctional epithelium here, and this junctional epithelium starts moving apically. So it moves into the apical direction. So because of the inflammation, because of there are releases of certain substances, so there is increase in the vascular permeability, or I should write the permeability itself. So there is increase in the permeability, also vasodilation. So all of this leads to increase in the GCF, gingival crevicular fluid, because the fluid come out of the gingiva, fluid come out of the vessels, and this fluid coming out of the vessel is going to cause the gingiva appear swollen and red because of the inflammation. So inflammatory response, we see that there is a erythematous and edematous gingiva. Now this is the typical appearance of a gingivitis. Now this gingivitis sometimes, most often, leads to periodontitis. So the collagen destruction still extend, and this collagen destruction extend into the bone. So we have got bone here also. So this collagen degradation, it extends into the bone, alveolar bone, into the periodontal ligament, and we see that there are neutrophils in the pocket epithelium. So I should write epithelium, and we see that there are plasma cells into the connective tissue, right. So the junctional epithelium start migrating apically, there is a deepening of the pocket, and like this the plaque bacteria, it keeps on going, proliferating apically, damaging more tissues and causing the chronic inflammation, more tissue damage, and the cycle keeps on continuing. So this is the process of the periodontitis. Here we have talked about the gingivitis, where only the gingiva is affected. So there is a red and edematous gingiva, but in case of periodontitis we see that there is a pocket, there is a pocket epithelium, or we can say deepening of the pocket depth, and we see osteoclastic activity because this collagen is invading into the bone, invading into the periodontal ligament, and the junctional epithelium start migrating apically. This is what we see in case of a periodontitis, and this cycle keeps on continue. We have talked about that there are release of certain substances. So these chemicals which are causing the destruction, which is causing the collagen degradation, are the various cytokines, guys. So cytokines. Now this cytokines, the cytokines are due to the fibroblast. See, there are fibroblast, osteoclast, right? Destruction process going on. Collagen. Now fibroblast are the cells, let me tell you this first, which produce also collagen. So produce also collagen, and which destroy also collagen. On the other hand, if we see, we have osteoclast, which are the cutting cells, or we have got the cementoclast, which are the cutting cells. We have previous lectures, we have talked about that clastic clast. If you see clast in the suffix, that means the cutting cells, right? But fibroblast are the cells which are cutting also, producing also. So we have got the fibroblast and the osteoclast. These fibroblast and osteoclast, they produced some enzyme. These enzyme like MMPs, these enzyme, they destroy the connective tissue, they destroy the bone. So there is a destruction of the bone and the connective tissue due to this proteolytic enzymes. These enzymes are the matrix metalloproteinases. So we have got the matrix metalloproteinases, as we can see ases, we have ACE, so that is the enzyme, right? That is obvious, we know, we have studied that in biochemistry, of course. Then these matrix metalloproteinases, or I can just say MMPs, these are the proteolytic enzyme which are going to destroy the collagen. So these are either they are going to destroy the collagen, or either they are going to destroy the gelatin matrix. So if they are collagenases, that means destroy the collagen. ACEs, we have got the word ACEs. Then we have got gelatinases. So the MMPs which are involved with the collagen destructions are MMP 1, 8 and 13, and for gelatin we have MMP 2 and 9, right. So these MMPs are first, they are there in the inactive form, and then they are activated by the other proteases like cathepsin, which are released by the neutrophils. So neutrophils are going to basically activate these MMPs, because we have talked about neutrophils are going to do the destruction, the tissue destruction due to cytokines is basically due to the neutrophils, majorly due to the neutrophils. So these neutrophils, they are going to activate this MMPs. So let me just write here, neutrophils, they releases some proteases. So they releases some proteases, and these proteases activate the MMPs, right. And these MMPs are going to do the tissue destruction. So they are going to destroy the collagen. Destroy the collagen, guys. And we have got some other chemicals also which can inhibit these MMPs. So guys, what if we inhibit these MMPs? So we can protect the tissue destruction. We can actually do no harm to the tissues, right. So there are also something known as the tissue inhibitor MPs, which is the metalloproteinases. So we have the tissue inhibitor of metalloproteinases. Metalloproteinases. Also we have got some drugs like tetracycline and metronidazole, and this is the reason that we study tetracycline for the drug delivery system. So local drug delivery system, we will be talking about the doses of doxycycline, which is basically a tetracycline. So the tetracycline inhibits these MMP class. So guys, like this, there is an inflammatory response. We have got interleukin 1 alpha, which resorbs the bone. We have got interleukin 1 beta, which is also pro-inflammatory cytokines. Like that, we have got anti-inflammatory cytokines also, which works against the inflammation process, which is like interleukin 10. And guys, there is one more thing I would like to tell you, is that suppose here is the bacteria. This is our bacteria. I am writing B for the bacteria, right, the dangerous one. So this bacteria has got the lipopolysaccharide. This lipopolysaccharide is very virulent, and we have talked about that lipopolysaccharide is present in the gram negative bacteria. So it has got endotoxins, and due to these endotoxins there is an inflammatory process which happens, and ultimately there is a release of interleukin 1, tumor necrotic factor alpha, interleukin 6, like that. There are some pro-inflammatory cytokines which we see. Now what happens? There are monocytes. Suppose these are the monocytes. So these monocytes, guys, these monocytes, I am writing just M for the monocytes. These monocytes, in response to these factor like tumor necrotic factor alpha or interleukin 1, so these they convert into the precursor cells. So in response to this, suppose they have converted into the precursor cells like this. So they develop some receptors which we call the rank receptors, and there are other monocyte, or we can say the osteoblast. So here are other osteoblasts which are present. So these osteoblasts have got the receptors for the rank receptor. So which is, what do we call, the rank L. When they combine together, when the rank receptor combine with the rank L receptor, they differentiate, activate, and they finally form osteoclast cells. As you can see, these ruffled borders, these are the cutting edge. So if you can see here, these are basically the cutting edge which does the bone resorption. So these are the osteoclast. So here is the cutting process which happens here. They act on the bone and they cut the bone. So this is the part of the bone, they start cutting it. So here we also see that these receptors like tumor necrotic factor alpha or interleukin, they are doing the osteoclastic activity also. They break down the bone also. They are destroying the tissue, they are destroying the bone. So there is a mass scale destruction going on in the tissues. Collagen is also destroyed, bone is also destroyed, and this leads to the periodontitis, which is the destruction of the periodontal ligament as well as destruction of the bone. Now you understand that how this destruction process happens. Now you understand that how this periodontitis happen, what happens, how it cuts the bone, how it cuts the periodontal ligament. Now that we understand the periodontal pathology, we will be able to understand the defense mechanism of the gingiva also. So let's talk about the defense mechanism of gingiva. So the defense mechanism, before starting with the defense mechanism of gingiva, because the first thing I am going to tell you is that the GCF, the gingival clavicular fluid is basically an inflammatory exudate. What is transudate? What is exudate? First of all, we should be familiarized with both of these terms. So guys, we have got two terms. One is the transudate. I'm going to write with a blue because it is only the water content. So transudate, I'm always bad at spellings. Transudate. So guys, transudate is just the filtrate of the blood plasma. So these, suppose these are the, okay, let's take the red color. These are the endothelial, these are the endothelial walls. Now what happens? We know that there is a contraction of the endothelial cells and there is a lot of fluid coming out. If only fluid comes out, then that is a transudate. So let me make it with a blue one. So only the blood plasma comes out, then it is a transudate. What happens if cells are also coming? If cells are also coming, like neutrophils coming, so if inflammatory cells are also coming, neutrophils, macrophages, so let's make macrophages also. So this process is what do we call the exudate. That means lot of cells coming. If only water is coming, then is what do we call the transudate. Now I think you are familiar with both of these terms. What is a transudate? What is a exudate? So transudate is when there is only filtrate of the plasma. There is no cells. So only plasma filtrate. This is non-inflammatory because we cannot see any inflammatory cells, right? Non-inflammatory. And also we see that the specific gravity of this fluid is very less. So specific gravity is less, which is less than 1.02. And the pH is more alkaline, that means more than 7.3. So the cells are very less. And if you compare this transudate with the exudate, so in the exudate we have got the cells coming, inflammatory cells. So there is increase in the vascular permeability because the cells are also coming and we require more space for the cells to come out, right? So there is a edema also we see, swelling, edema also we see, and this is an inflammatory response, guys, because we can see the inflammatory cells. So let's write cells positive, that is more number of cells. And the pH, because the inflammation we know that is slightly acidic. So this is slightly acidic, which is 7.3, less than 7.3 we are talking. And the specific gravity of this is more, so 1.02. And also we see the high protein, so increase in the protein content, high proteins. Now there is a scientist named Brill. He told that there is a presence of GCF. That means there is some fluid which comes out of the gingiva, and Brill actually told it the transudate. Now don't get confused if the question asks what is GCF, we have to definitely tell that GCF, let's write it in the bold letter, guys, that GCF is our inflammatory exudate. Inflammatory exudate. Because in the GCF we see lot of cells, inflammatory cells, which also come out and during the inflammation process, right? So later on Alfano told that the GCF is a inflammatory exudate. Now what are the methods of collecting the GCF? Guys, this part we have already talked about in our periodontal lecture series. So if you want more detailed videos of this, then you can watch our periodontal lecture series in that defense mechanism of gingiva. We have done in two parts. One is the defense mechanism and the other one is the saliva. So we have covered in two parts. If you want to watch detailed videos, this is a express revision course, so therefore we are only covering the high yielding points. We are not going into the depth of the topic, we are not going into the deep understanding of the topic. So this is just to revise fastly. So what are the methods of collecting the GCF? We have got the paper strip methods. So paper strip is, see, the absorbing the paper strip. Suppose this is this is the gingiva, this is the tooth. So red color. So guys, so many colors, and this is the real enjoyment of teaching compared to the board. So here is our paper strip. This is the paper strip, right? Paper, I am just writing the paper. So this paper absorbs all the fluid. Let's make this fluid from blue color. So this paper absorbs all the fluid. We put this paper in the sulcus, and then into the sulcus this paper absorbs the GCF, and then we measure it. So this is the Brill's method. This is the Brill's method. Then another method, guys, is the Low and Holm-Pedersen technique. So Low and Holm-Pedersen, he told that if we put the paper deep inside into the sulcus, then because of the irritation of the tissues, there can be extra GCF which is to be measured. So he says that the paper strip of the paper should be kept at the entrance of the pocket, not into the deep inside the pocket. So again the gingiva here. So he said that it is supposed to be put at the entrance of the pocket. So this paper is going to absorb all the fluid itself. So this is our Low and Holm-Pedersen technique. Guys, then more techniques for measuring the collecting the GCF. We have twisted threads, micropipettes, So these twisted threads are like kind of a braided threads. So these are the pre-weight threads. So we just have to put it inside and then again weight it. So we know that how much we have to check the weight before and how much weight is after. And the micropipettes, we collect the GCF in very small thin capillary tubes. So there are small capillary tubes which are placed into the sulcus. Then guys, we have the intraclavicular washings. In that we take the washings. And now the digital one, the electronic one, the new technology. So we have got the periotron, which is basically an electronic method to measure the GCF. So this is the electronic one. And the paper which we use in periotron is the perio paper. So the fluid is collected on the blotter, and the wetness of the paper strip affects the flow of the current. Suppose if the paper is dry, that means the zero reading. We get a digital reading because this is the electronic method. And if the paper is wet, then there is an increased capacitance. So we get the higher values. So this is how do we check. And if we are taking the paper strips now, this paper strip can be again stained with the ninhydrin, which is a stain. So we stain it with an ninhydrin, and then we check in the microscope, or also we can stain in the fluorescein. And then this is fluorescein stain which we give to the patient 3 years before collecting the GCF fluid. And then these strips are examined under the, because fluorescent, right? So then we examine these strips under the UV light. So the GCF volume in the proximal spaces of the molars we get is normally 0.43 to 1.56 microliter. So this is an important value which is to be memorized for the exam viewpoint. Guys, we also have the kits available to check for the diagnosis. So we have the diagnostic kits. So this is basically a kind of a rapid chair kit. So like that, in the diagnostic kits we have the PerioCheck. PerioCheck is a rapid chair side kit which measures the neutral proteases. So basically the collagenase activity in the GCF it measures. Then we have the prognostic, STIK. So this is a kit from the Dentsply, and we have got the stick word is there, right? So we have to remember the stick word S for serine. So it detects the presence of serine proteinases. Right, PerioCheck we have neutral proteinases. These are the, let's write the chair side kits. So the chair side kits, diagnostic kits. Also this prognostic, which is a product of a Dentsply, it also detects the presence of elastases in the GCF. And like that we have many more kits like BioLyse. So BioLyse we have to remember from the E word which comes in the end. So E word BioLyse, that means elastase. And then we have Pocket Watch for AST. Or aspartate transaminase, so which is checked via the Pocket Watch. So guys, these all are the chair side tests, or above that we have covered the methods of collection the GCF. Now guys, talking about the composition of the GCF. So the composition of the GCF. So we have cellular cells, that means then the electrolytes, then guys we have the organic compounds, then we have the bacterial product, so metabolic and the bacterial products, and also some enzymes. So all the cellular things in the GCF are basically the cells which are present are of course the bacteria, and we have our inflammatory cells, like initially we see that B lymphocytes, right, T lymphocytes. So we have got the neutrophils, lymphocytes, monocytes. So the important thing which we have to remember here is that T is to B lymphocytes ratio. So let's go a little bit down. So the ratio of T is to B lymphocytes. So we know that B cells are the memory cells, they are less in number, right? In the normal blood, the ratio is 3:1. So B cells are less in number, but what happens in the GCF? This ratio is reversed. So we have 1:3 ratio for the GCF. This also again guys we have to remember this, that in the GCF the ratio is reversed. Also one more thing I would like to add is that the glucose concentration of the blood is different and glucose concentration of the GCF is different. So glucose in the GCF is at the higher sides. So glucose in the GCF is on the higher sides. But if we compare the protein in the GCF is lower than that of the serum, right. This point also guys, we have to remember it for sure, that glucose is in higher concentration. Now see, because there are local bacteria which are present, so that is why they have increased the glucose concentration of the GCF and the protein concentration, because so much of breakdown is happening, and we know that protein is usually associated with the construction purpose rather than the destructive phenomenons. So we have got guys the electrolytes. In the electrolytes, sodium, potassium, calcium, all these electrolytes are present in the GCF, and some organic compounds like carbs. We have already talked about the carbs are 3 to 4 times more than the serum. So let's write 3 to 4 also here, 3 to 4 times. And we have the protein components which is less than that of serum but still present, and we have the glucose, hexosamine, and then hexouronic acid, all these, and the various metabolic products, the products which are released by the bacteria such as lactic acid, uric acid, formic acid. While we are talking about the plaque, we will be talking about the various products, noxious products which are released by the bacteria. So we have got the hydrogen sulfide, definitely endotoxins which are released by the gram negative bacteria. So urea, lactic acid, let's just write it, lactic acid. Then we have the endotoxins, then we have got the H2S, then urea, formic acid. So all these products are the bacterial products, or we can say the metabolic products, and various enzymes. So these enzymes actually tell us the activity of the disease. For example, metalloproteinases, so it is going to tell this about the cytokines, or we have interleukins. So procollagenases, acute phase proteins. So all these enzymes, we have got test for various enzymes, right, for the lactic acid dehydrogenase. So if there is a collagenase enzyme, if there is a collagen destruction, phospholipase, then alkaline phosphatase, acid phosphatase, which we do for the bone resorption. So we have got various enzymes also, and these enzymes actually help us to detect. So we have various tests like fluorimetry, or we have the radioimmunoassay, or we have the enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. So we have got various tests so that we can detect the various enzymes which are associated. So guys, now talking about the saliva. Now let's talk about the saliva. So saliva has got various functions. It acts as the lubricant, because there are glycoproteins which are present. So I'm just going to write glycoproteins here, and some mucoids also. So the physical, it also does the physical protection. So the physical protection, since it forms a coating same as the gastric mucin. So these mucoids also forms the coating layer. Then it also act as the cleanser. So we also see that the saliva act as the cleaning agent, because the flow of the saliva cleans some plaque or some food debris. So even the patient with a lack of saliva, xerostomia, we see that there is a food debris which is there inside the teeth and here and there. Then the saliva also act as a buffer. So there is a buffering capacity of the saliva which is due to the presence of bicarbonate. So before bicarbonates, we always remember this, bicarbonates and phosphates present in the saliva act as the buffer. So this buffering capacity acts as the antacid. And then we have got the antibacterial action of the saliva. This antibacterial action of the saliva is quite an important role for us, because it has got immunoglobulin A. Now there are two things. One is let me write here, immunoglobulin A, which is present in the saliva. So I'm just going to write A here, and then we have got guys immunoglobulin G, which is present in the GCF. So let's understand this, that in the saliva A is there, so we can remember immunoglobulin A, and in the GCF G is there, so we can remember the immunoglobulin G. So we have got lysozymes, and lysozymes play a very important role for gram positive as well as for gram negative bacteria. So for positive as well as for gram negative bacteria. So we see that lysozyme provides protection against Veillonella and AA committens, Actinobacillus, Actinomycetum committens, right. Then also there are more enzymes which are present in the saliva. So some of them are, let's put it in a box. So these other enzymes are lactoferrin, which are against the Actinobacillus, and then we have got, again I am going to talk about myeloperoxidase. Now myeloperoxidase act as bactericidal also, static also. So it has got two function. It is bactericidal for the Actinobacillus. So I am just gonna remember that bacillus, Ci is there, in the cidal Ci is there, and also we see that it has got bacteriostatic action. So you will have to excuse me for the background music, guys. So bacteriostatic action for the actinomyces. So you have to remember static and cis. So which is the, again more enzymes we are going to talk about. Last enzyme which we are going to talk about is the lactoperoxidase, thiocyanate system, which is again a most frequently asked question. Thiocyanate system. It is very easy for us to remember because it is bactericidal to two enzymes. One is the lactobacillus, because lacto already word is there, lactobacillus, so which is very easy to remember, lacto word is there, and the another enzyme, another bacteria for streptococcus, right. And more importantly, we have talked about the immunoglobulin which are present in the saliva is IgA, and the immunoglobulin which is more frequently present in the GCF is IgG, and there is something known as orogranulocytes. So orogranulocytes are the live neutrophils, are the live lymphocytes, live leukocytes which are present in the saliva. So basically we see the PMNs, the polymorphoneutrophils, or we can say the polymorphonuclear lymphocytes living, if they are present in the saliva, then these are called as orogranulocyte, and if they are migrating, we call it the orogranulocytic migratory rate. So the rate is related to the severity of the inflammation of the gingiva. So this rate, let's write here, the rate is important for the inflammation of the gingiva. Inflammation, we check the severity. So therefore the rate is a reliable index for the gingivitis. So we can assess the gingivitis, we can check the severity of the gingivitis by correlating with the rate of migration of orogranulocytes. So if we see that PMNs are nicely enjoying dancing in the saliva, and the rate is related to the inflammation. So if we see more of them, then there is a more inflammation, which is very easy. So it can be used as the index for gingivitis. Now guys, we know that this gingivitis, or we can say the gingival inflammation, is due to two factors. One is the dental plaque, another one is the host response. The first thing which we have talked about is there is an imbalance between the dental plaque and the host response. So this imbalance initiates the inflammation of the gingiva. So because of the bacteria, we have already talked about the whole pathology. Bacteria comes, it goes inside the tissues, there is an inflammation process. Now first of all, the bacteria releases these endotoxins. These endotoxins are going to destroy the endothelial cell walls, and also are going to activate this inflammatory process, wherein the neutrophil comes, the macrophages come, and they also release some chemicals. So bacteria releases endotoxin, that is also destroying the tissues, and in response to neutrophils, in order to kill that bacteria, is also releasing some chemicals. But this chemical which the neutrophil is releasing to destroy the bacteria is destroying the tissues also. So we have talked about all the cytokines. The cytokines are released to kill the bacteria, but this is killing the surrounding neighboring tissues as well. So we see that there is an inflammatory process, and in response to this inflammatory process, there is a destruction. If this destruction is in the gingiva, then we call it the gingivitis. If it is in the periodontal ligament and the supporting alveolar bone, then we see this as a periodontitis. So we have got some stages of the gingivitis which we are going to talk about. The last topic of the today's lecture is the stages of the gingivitis. So we are going to talk about the stages of the gingivitis. The first stage, guys, we have is the initial stage. So let's write here stages. So the first stage we have is the, let's use a color, guys, initial stage. So this is the initial lesion. Now guys, this is when there is a plaque accumulation, and after the beginning of plaque accumulation, after 2 to 4 days, we see that after 2 to 4 days, guys, we see 2 to 4 days of the plaque accumulation, we see that there is an initial stage of the gingivitis. So the time is usually 2 to 4 days. And what happens? What are the initial signs of the inflammation? These are the dilated capillaries, there is increase in the blood flow. So let's write here increase in the blood flow. Then we see dilated capillaries. So I can just write the vasodilation in here. And guys, also we see that there is a infiltration of the neutrophils. So initially the neutrophils come. So we know that the first thing which comes is the neutrophil, and then these neutrophils releases more of the chemical and call other neutrophils and the monocytes. So the first thing is the neutrophils which comes. So the clinical finding, if we see, guys, then there is increase in the GCF flow. So increase in the GCF is the clinical finding. So let's just write here the clinical finding. Because we cannot check the increased blood flow, right, in the capillaries. So the initial finding which we see is our increase in the GCF. Now the second stage, guys, is our early stage, or we can write just the early lesions. And these early lesions, they starts from 4 to 7 days. That is usually a 1 week of time after the plaque accumulations. So once plaques start accumulating after 1 week of time, so I'm just writing 4 to 7 days as per the textbook. So after a week's time, of plaque accumulation, we see there is an early stage of gingivitis. So early stage, what we usually see in the early stage, first clinical sign which we see for the gingivitis is our bleeding on probing. This is the earliest sign of the gingival inflammation. See guys, there are two earliest sign of the gingival inflammation. Let me write it on another page because this is very important topic. So the earliest sign which we see is the bleeding on two. There are two earliest sign, the bleeding on probing and increase in the GCF. So bleeding on probing is more of a subjective sign compared to the more of a objective sign, I'm sorry, it is more of a objective sign than the subjective. So if there is a presence of bleeding on probing, see, bleeding on probing may not be a good diagnostic indicator for the clinical attachment, but it is for the gingivitis. So if, and also if there is a lack of bleeding on probing, then we can calculate that there is a negative attachment loss. But if there is a positive bleeding on probing, there may be a clinical attachment. That is a whole different story, but bleeding on probing is definitely the first sign, earliest sign of the gingival inflammation, or we can say for the gingivitis. And guys, also we see the redness, so erythema, and there is increase in the GCF. Definitely, because increase in the GCF is already started in the initial stage. So there is increase in the gingival fluid, and there are leukocytes now which start coming in within the week's time. So since there is now a week after the onset of clinical gingivitis, we see that there are other leukocytes also which start coming, which we have already talked about, the neutrophils called other neutrophils. So there are also neutrophils, there are also monocytes. Now they start destroying the collagen. This is the time that the collagen destruction starts. So there is lymphocytes which start coming, lymphocytes, and we see that there is increase in the collagen destruction. Now we have already talked about the collagen destruction is directly related to the MMPs, matrix metalloproteinases. In this video only we have talked about, right, in the previous part. So there is retipegs in the sulcular epithelium, there is increased collagen destruction, there is infiltration of the lymphocyte also we see now in the early stage of the lesion. Talking about the third one here, we have is the established stage. So the third stage is the established stage, or I can just write the established lesion. Established lesion. So this lesion is described as a moderate to severe gingival inflammation, or I can just say a chronic gingival inflammation. Now the gingival inflammation has become chronic. So there is 2 to 3 weeks of time after there is a beginning of plaque accumulation. It has been 2 to 3 weeks after the plaque is accumulated. Now there is infiltration of plasma cells, B lymphocytes. So plasma cells and B lymphocytes. Now 2 to 3 weeks, right? So I'm going to write 14 to 21 days time after the beginning of the plaque accumulation. And because since there is plasma cells, B lymphocytes, there is a formation of the pocket which we see here. So there is the small gingival pockets aligned with the pocket epithelium. And this is the time that we see changes in the color changes, size change, textures change, so loss of stippling, all these things which we have talked about in the normal morphology of the gingiva. So there is a change in the color, change in the size, change in the texture of the gingiva, and so on. So now the gingiva is no more firm and resilient. Now the gingiva is no more coral pink, it's red, and sometimes because of the venous stasis we also see the bluish hue which is present. Now the attached gingiva has no more orange peel appearance. It has become very smooth and shiny because of the exudate. So these are some changes which we see in the established lesion. And guys, one more thing I would like to add in here is that the gingivitis is a T cell lesion and the periodontitis, now you can remember it, while you are writing P, you can also make it B, right? First I'll just redo it. So first I have written P, now you can also make this P as the B. So you can remember it this way, that periodontitis is a B cell lesion. So P, like this. So gingivitis is a T cell lesion, periodontitis is a B cell lesion. This is very important thing which we have to remember this, that gingivitis is usually dominated by T cells and the periodontitis is usually dominated by the B cells. So guys, let's talk about various forms of gingivitis. If generalized gingivitis, what do we mean by the term general? General means whole. So that means the entire mouth. There is a gingivitis, entire mouth, let's write. Then we have got the marginal gingivitis. That means only the margins are included. So that means the marginal gingiva. Then papillary gingivitis, that means the interdental papilla. Very easy, these terms are very easy. So if the interdental papilla is involved, sometime there can be involvement of the marginal gingiva also, but usually the papilla is involved. Then we have got the localized diffuse. So localized means only in specific area, that means a tooth or so. So one or more areas. But if we are talking about localized marginal, that means one or more teeth plus we are talking about diffused. So diffused means the mucobuccal fold, margins of the mucobuccal fold, right, mucobuccal fold. Then we are talking about localized marginal gingivitis. That means only the margins are involved. So marginal gingivitis, this is localized marginal. That means the marginal gingiva of one or more teeth. So that is the marginal gingiva. So localized we are done. Now talking about the generalized. Generalized means all the teeth. So that means all teeth plus we are talking about generalized marginal gingivitis. That means the gingival margins of all the teeth. So that is the marginal gingiva of all the teeth. There can be involvement of interdental papilla also, but on a broader picture we are just talking about the marginal gingivitis. Marginal gingiva is involved. Then talking about the last term we have is the generalized diffused gingivitis. That means whole of the entire gingiva, of whole of the entire dentition. That means the marginal gingiva, attached gingiva, the interdental papilla, everything is involved in all the teeth. So guys, this is about the today's lecture. I hope that you have enjoyed the video. So if you have enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Also you can comment in the comment section below because it motivates me to put more videos of this kind for you guys for free, and also you don't have to take down notes now. A link is provided in the description box below, and you can check out our website www.x2.com for more interesting notes, and check out in our playlist. You will find more interesting videos like this and more interesting videos with the storytelling. So guys, keep reading, keep learning, stay motivated. I'll see you soon in the next video.